and/or a specific Medicare for All plan, I think it's important that everyone receives healthcare and has healthcare. I think that some concerns that people may have is if they are satisfied with their private insurance, what sort of differences would they be seeing in their healthcare plan, and how would they be able to maintain their current healthcare plan if they are satisfied?
So, the senator has proposed a Medicare for All plan, which would be a universal health care plan, which would replace private insurance. And there's a very specific reason for doing that, and that's because some candidates who have dropped out of the race have proposed a kind of sham plan called like a Medicare for All who want it plan. But here's the problem with doing that. If we were to implement such, which is essentially it would be a public option plan, but publicly subsidized by like taxpayer money for certain people. And so the problem with doing that is that it's kind of similar to what we have right now, but on a bigger scale, where we are spending taxpayer dollars buying insulin for people at $3,000 a month for that insulin when it costs $5 to produce the insulin. Because the pharmaceutical companies have such a stranglehold on Washington that they are able to prevent any kind of like policy to rein in healthcare or pharmaceutical spending. And the same thing goes for medical bills in general and the healthcare lobbying in Washington. And when you have a public option plan that doesn't replace private insurance, the problem is that you don't have the bargaining power in order to reduce those costs down to a reasonable level. I'm not saying that drug companies should still make a profit, but if they're charging $20 or $30 a month for insulin versus and they're still making a $25 profit on that, that's still an enormous profit margin when you consider the fact that almost half this country uses insulin. So bringing it down to like a reasonable profit margin is a part of the Medicare for All plan. And then we wouldn't be wasting taxpayer money paying for insulin for someone so that they can survive, and also at the same time just basically handing over gobs of taxpayer money to pharmaceutical companies to further concentrate wealth in the top 10 or 1%. So that's like a major difference between the public option versus a universal healthcare plan like Medicare for All. Another one is that we actually have a huge increase in efficiency by moving to a Medicare for All plan, which would eliminate a lot of the middlemen and roadblocks being put in place to try to deny people coverage for different issues, and those are expensive. Like people work bureaucratic processes to like fight over trying to deny people claims. So rather than spending money on denying people claims, why don't we spend that money on just providing more healthcare for more people and focusing more on preventative healthcare from the beginning?
And I think that you brought up a lot of sort of plans, and I asked you about them. So if under a Senator Sanders or President Sanders presidency, how would you view the country? How would you view America if differently from them?
So I guess one follow-up thing I do want to mention about healthcare is that I absolutely believe that healthcare is a human right and that everybody should have access to healthcare and should never be worried about going to the doctor. And nobody should be going into debt because they can't afford their insulin, and nobody should be losing their house because they can't afford chemotherapy. And I think if you look at the first couple states that have voted in the primary, actually all the states where they've done exit polls so far, Medicare for All won by massive margins, like 50% or more in every state so far. So this is a winning issue for the Democratic Party for sure. And I think it indicates that people really aren't happy with private health insurance and the way that it handles provision. provision of healthcare, particularly like even people who do like their plan. Like in Nevada, we saw that people who like their healthcare showed up and still voted for Senator Sanders and voted for Medicare for all because they want their family and their friends to have the same quality of care that they have.
Yeah.
So, in terms of what I see different about the country under Senator Sanders becoming president, I see a future that I can look forward to. I see a future where, we're not gonna, like, I think the biggest thing is that we're not gonna stop pushing for a progressive agenda if we get Bernie Sanders into the White House. And that's why Bernie Sanders' slogan is "Not Me, Us," because Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who's being real about the fact that even getting me elected isn't going to be enough. And I'm asking all of you to keep pushing to get a progressive Congress elected, taking back the Senate for Democrats, primarying Democrats who are beholden to corporate interess, and getting the people in the Congress necessary to pass a progressive agenda, but also going for state and local offices too with a progressive agenda. And we can do things like paid family leave at the state level. So we should definitely be pushing for that. We can do things like Medicaid expansion is going to be on the ballot in Missouri for November. And I think a lot of people in this office volunteering are heavily involved in these other movements. And these are like the people you want running the campaign to beat Trump, honestly. Like, these are the people who are like the diehard volunteers showing up day after day to knock doors tirelessly. And I see the other candidate, we're basically in a two-candidate race for the nomination at this point, sitting back, relying on name recognition and throwing money at TV ads and hoping that that's going to be enough to win the nomination. But I can guarantee you that that is not enough to beat Trump. And so if you want to beat Trump, the candidate is absolutely Bernie Sanders.
And I think, that sort of bridges into the last question is, does the campaign have any specific message that it wants to share with the teenagers and students out there?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the campaign's message so much as my personal mission, which is a fun fact that most people don't realize. 2020 is the first election, the first general election in which millennials and Gen Z outnumber baby boomers as eligible voters.
Okay.
So we know that the vast majority of young people are already on board for a progressive agenda, and we also know that the vast majority of marginalized people who have been repeatedly beaten down by the system and told that their voices and their votes don't matter are also on board for a progressive agenda. And so this election is entirely about turnout because we have the votes it takes to win if we go vote. And the enemy in this election is actually cynicism. I don't care about Trump. We need to get Trump out. But really the enemy is cynicism because so many young people, so many marginalized people feel like their vote doesn't matter and are turned off by voting in general. And that's why it's going to take a campaign like ours with over 1 million volunteers knocking doors, making phone calls, and sending texts. I'm going to be on campuses all day tomorrow getting the students to turn out to vote. And that's what it's going to take, not only to win this primary, but to beat Trump. And if we vote, we will win. Not just the White House, but also the Congress that we need. We're going to take back the Senate, and we're going to elect the progressives that we need in Congress, at the local level, at the state level. So go vote. That's the basic of it. And if you're inspired by this, then volunteer, because this election is more important than just one person, and that's why the slogan again is "Not Me, Us." It's about a movement to transform this country for our future, right? And so it's asking us to go one step further than voting and actually volunteer. And there's so many ways to plug into that. If you go to BernieSanders.com, events.BernieSanders.com or map.BernieSanders.com are really easy ways to get involved. If you're seeing this before Election Day and can make it down to the office in St. Louis, 1820 Washington Avenue, between Jefferson Avenue and the City Museum, we'd love to have you come in for even an hour and help us get out the vote tomorrow. Or at least make sure you text or call 3 friends and make sure that they're going to vote tomorrow. Talk to family, too. That's so important because honestly, it's shown that like when young people talk to their families, it has more impact than anyone else in persuading the family to actually first of all, vote if they weren't planning to, and consider a candidate that they may not have been previously considering. So,
all right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brendon. Thank you for answering all our questions. All right.
Awesome.